We're here, we're continuing our work, House Transportation Committee. It's Thursday, February 23rd. And we are continuing to hear testimony relating to the administration's proposal in our T-bill. So this morning we're going to be hearing about Section 5, the maintenance position request, and then we'll start there. Yeah, so we welcome Todd Law, who's here and has been in our committee before, talking about the maintenance and food. So welcome back to the committee.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Todd Law. I'm the Deputy Director of District Maintenance and Fleet for the Agency of Transportation. So I didn't know if you had any insight into the bridge, so I did kind of a brief presentation on the bridge itself, and that'll go into our justification of the two positions that we were asking for in the T-bill. So obviously, this is the temporary bridge during construction of the actually that's demolition of the old bridge. So the history of this bridge, so originally the bridge was a swing bridge. So it had a turntable that swung back and forth to allow vessels to travel through that opening through the pass. In 1953, it was replaced with the previous bridge, which is a double-leafed bascule. And apparently bascule means, and I learned this one during the testimony from highway construction, means seesaw. So the double leaf bascule that you can see in, let's see, the lower right picture and also the one adjacent to that, the one just to the left of that. The upper left is the turntable style, the swing bridge, and the new bridge is in the upper right corner. So it's the only movable bridge in VTrans inventory, which is kind of lucky for us because obviously we need tenders and we need all kinds of maintenance for this new bridge. The old one was a little more simplified. This new one has all kinds of controls and control rooms and hydraulics that weren't in the old one. It's a lot more sophisticated and has a 100-year life expectancy compared to the almost, just over 50 years for the one that was just replaced. So this is some of the construction photos. The bulkheads you can see in that upper right-hand picture show the areas. So it's almost like going through a submarine if you go through it. There's a lot of duck walking to go out in some of those areas. So I'm under 6 feet tall. It was still tight for me, and I'm over 50 years old. So, it's difficult to get in and out of here, but, most of it is walking on catwalks, et cetera. So, but you can see a lot of the different components that go into this bridge. And the big one that's going to require quite a bit of maintenance is machinery. So there's a lot of hydraulics, a lot of areas that we're going to need to grease, a lot of some motors in here. There's 2 large generators, one on each side that control in power outages because there is a requirement, a code of federal regulations that requires us to open this throughout the year, different time frames depending on the time of the year. We'll get into that in just a second. So these are the 2 largest electric motors that open and close that drawbridge. And the control panel. So big computer. There's actually a control room that's in one of the floors. So this is a 3-floor structure that actually the bottom floor is about 11 feet below normal water levels. So when you're down there, you're below water level. And the new bridge, unlike the old bridge, you could actually it would ramp up. You could actually drive up in there, and they had some people that almost jumped it, didn't quite make it, but and a couple that had run into the bridge. The new one actually recesses down into a sump. So there's a big opening between where the lane is and the bridge is when the bridge is going up. So that's not going to be possible in the future. That ramping, we're not going to see the, the stunt cars out there trying to trump it. Yep. So
Blues Brothers. Your Blues Brothers.
So along with that, for the safety of the traveling public, there's actually 2 sets of gates. So there's a system that needs to be put in place here every time we lower the gates and then raise the bridge and then do it all in reverse. Lower the bridge, raise the gate. So one of these gates actually will take a tractor trailer driving through it at slow speeds for the safety of the traveling public, because we don't want them going down into that sump. It's 20 plus feet deep. So that would be tragic. So, but with that, there's a lot of different mechanical rooms. There's a lot of, again, there is a control room itself that has, I don't know, 10 different panels in there that operate that bridge and ensure that it operates correctly. There's also closed circuit TV, so you can view that from different areas within the bridge. So if you're opening it, you can actually see the gates go down. You can verify this, again, for safety. So it is a very complicated and complex new system with lots of fail-safe in there and lots of safety for the traveling public. So this is a view from the control house. Wireless communication between the spans. They went back and forth about sizing generators. They have one for both sides. They ended up with one on each side. Those will have to be exercised and maintained periodically throughout the life of this bridge. There is a catwalk that goes underneath this. And they showed me these lights down just under the bridge. You can actually change those from the catwalk. And they showed me how to do that. And I don't think that, again, that's not anything that I'm going to go in and do, because, it's definitely for somebody who's more able-bodied than I am. So this is the Code of Federal Regulations that's governing the bridge operations. So we have our own CFR for Lake Champlain. It's through the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard kind of enforces this for us. But it talks about how often the bridge has to be open. And as you can see, we have a half-hour time frame from May 15th to October 15th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That we would have to open that. During the off-season and overnight, that half-hour response time goes to 4 hours. So we're on call 24/7, 365 on this. If somebody, and they do have some movement of vessels in the winter months, the channel a lot of times stays open. There's a lot of moving water through there. So we will have Coast Guard cutters that need to come through and some of the other vessels that need to go through. So again, we have to be on call to go there and open that bridge. In the past, we used to run this bridge with temporaries all summer long, and then would have some of our district staff as kind of the backups for that 1 or 2 times a year. And we're not seeing, number one, we're not seeing the temporary employees apply for our jobs. And up in this area, this is the northwest corner of the state. This is where we're seeing our most vacancies, between St. Albans, Colchester, and of course, this is right in between those two. So we're looking at how we're going to be able to run this with our own staff, hopefully. So the bridge is opened. It is open to traffic now, the actual bridge itself. There has not been a ribbon cutting or anything or an official opening. It's still under construction. We're just removing a lot of the pilings and everything from the temporary bridge that was put in place. Because of course we need to have a temporary bridge there to make sure that Route 2 is such an important corridor up here. If Route 2 is not open and when the bridge gets stuck and we have to leave it open, it's a significant time frame to go around that, an hour and a half or so. And for emergency purposes, getting to and from healthcare facilities or getting EMS support, that could be fatal. So that's why, we're looking at immediately when this bridge is put into service that we need to start our maintenance on it. We need to know what our maintenance is. The old one, it just kind of ran, and when it broke, we fixed it, and there wasn't a whole lot of maintenance to it. This one, there definitely will be, between computer systems, all the hydraulics. So that's one of the things we're working very closely with our friends in highway construction to make sure that we have all those operations and maintenance manuals, et cetera. So again, the bridge tender has to be on site from 0800 to 2000 or 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week during the summer months of May 15th to October 15th, and 4-hour response time after those times, either late at night or outside of that October 15th. So this is a picture of the new bridge, and as you can see on the lower right-hand side, you can see how the new bridge actually recesses into that big sump area. That's like, three stories high. And when you get in there, it's actually very impressive to be underneath there. We see a lot of, we were there, it was right after a snow event. So we use regular salt on this bridge. So all of that salt actually runs down through. You can't seal this out. It has to go up and down. So you can't totally seal this out. So we get a lot of infiltration and intrusion from that salt laden water that comes down. So we're looking at a lot of even winter maintenance that's going to have to occur on this to make sure that we extend the life expectancy of this so we don't have issues from corrosion because of salt, et cetera, on this bridge. So this is the finished bridge. And again, they're tearing down on the upper picture here, they're tearing down the temporary bridge. So the new bridge is in service. And I think they're expecting final completion sometime in May timeframe. So the two positions that we're talking about here, because it's so technical in nature, all the computerized components and the control panels, we're looking at a technician, somebody with some technical aptitude to help with the operations of this bridge and make sure that we don't have any issues. And if we do, we can address them fairly quickly. And then again, we have a lot of moving parts here. So we're going to have a lot of normal maintenance that's going to be occurring on this. So we have another person that we call a transportation operations technician. Our TOTS are the same people that really plow the roads. We'll have a person that's dedicated to that bridge to do all those maintenance parts and make sure if there's any issues out there that we can address them fairly quickly and oversee the daily operations and maintenance. So the other piece of that is because it's 7 days a week and 12 hours a day, we also want to make sure that we have additional employees. We're looking at temporaries to potentially help us with this. So we're training 6 to 8 additional district employees. Again, those transportation operations technicians, the ones who are normally out plowing the roads, cutting trees, potholes, et cetera, to be backups if somebody's out sick. And again, with 2 people, 24/7 on call, having that backup is going to be important here. And again, when we can't open that bridge, the Coast Guard is usually on the phone with us, explaining to us that it's a requirement of us to open that bridge. It's a huge issue for them. It's a huge issue for us if it stays up. So, it's definitely in our best interest to make sure that this thing's operational and maintained correctly. So because there's not as much call during the winter months, we obviously have a lot of other needs throughout the system. So we've already identified some areas that we really need to focus on. If they're not working on the drawbridge itself, some of the other components that we can do. The Northwest is always a hotbed for what we call 1111 permits, the highway access permits. We have one person dedicated to that in each of the districts up there. So having additional backup on that will be extremely important. We're always getting calls from towns to help with grants, to help with project design and technical support, especially because a lot of that area is in that municipal storm separate sewer systems area, the MS4 area. So they're always looking for technical support on, how do we help with some of that connected infrastructure, all of the ditches that are connected into some of the waterways that have additional regulations on them. And there's always other things that a transportation operations technician can do. There's other bridges up there that need maintenance that they would still put the right in to do. So that's the PowerPoint as quickly as I can. Ready to field any questions.
That's great. That was really helpful for us to be reminded of, you know, what we're talking about here in terms of this bridge operation and what the, what appears is like only 3 lines of text in our bill. So Representative McCoy, I saw you had your hand up.
Yes. Can you give me a sense of how many vessels go through this bridge within the course of either that May 15th through October 15th, and then like October 16th through May 14th?
We can get that
Okay.
information. We have
Just a
the
sense of-
records on
okay.
that, so.
Just a sense. Thank you.
Well,
Other questions by the committee, Representative Burke?
Unless I missed something, I'm sorry. I'm just interested that the bridge is opening every half an hour in the summer months.
potentially, if there's a call for it.
Oh,
So
well,
that we have a phone number that
Okay,
a vessel can
not just
call.
automatically.
Correct. Yeah, we only open it if there's a call for it. Sometimes we do stack up other vessels in the queue. And again, it's a maximum of 24 per.
The longest anybody might be, you have to.
Right, yeah, they do have to, they will have to wait, potentially, so.
So, Tom, just to clarify on that one, so it's supposed to open every 30 minutes. So if you get there 5 minutes after the 30-minute piece, you're gonna have to wait until the next 30. So that's where it would stack up. And I believe the 24, it says that, Max, and I was doing the math in my head, and that's during a 12-hour period. But you could have some after hours times that, so it could actually be more than that a day. But that's where they could possibly stack up, though, is in that 30-minute window.
Interesting to see that in operation.
We might make a trip to go see it in operation. It'll be interesting to see. Representative Pouch?
I'm surprised we do apply salt, and, you know, we heard about some alternatives that are very expensive. But it seems like for this infrastructure, to not just apply sodium chloride, but to apply the specialty that doesn't corrode, seems like it might be worthwhile.
So what I actually asked that question when we went up. And what I was told by the resident engineer was this was designed to have salt on it. So that's why we want to make sure that we stay in the maintenance practice. Not to say that it couldn't change in the future. I know we do have other areas where we have used some acetates and that are less corrosive. And a lot of them are liquid systems. And I know a lot of, we had one, the bridge between West Lebanon and Hartford, White River Junction, that bridge used to have, it was an acetate, I think potassium acetate that we used in a liquid form. And it had significant issues with the applications. So they had to go through and continue with salt, and so it didn't work as well as it had planned. And I'm not sure if it's just how aggressive our winter is here, with the freezing, thaw, et cetera. So, but for whatever reason, we're in conjunction with New Hampshire DOT on that bridge. But we pulled that system out in the last 5 or 6 years.
I just wanted to add, one other problem is, so if we did that, our trucks are set up to do the liquid salt or rock salt, so we'd have to have a different setup, so a different truck, a different setup, a different operator. Because remember, we only have 1.2 people, that's if we're fully staffed, and we still have about 40 vacancies to do per route. So we would just have to add more stuff, that's all. But it is a good thought. We will be looking at it and thinking and watching that sort of stuff. And that's why also in that room that Todd had brought up, the sump room, we're gonna have to spray down things and keep it clean, and then it'll get, as we spray it, we take it out through that sump and clean. So we're gonna have to pay attention to that sort of stuff, yes.
So I have a quick, what is, this is, I'm assuming it's in the maintenance budget, right, these new positions?
Yes.
Right, and what is, just so I know the obvious question, like what is the cost of this? And, the positions, I'm not saying whether we need them or not, but do we have a sense of what this?
So the CFO's here, but I'm gonna throw out a number first, if he doesn't agree, correct me. I usually think about $100,000 per position for payroll and benefits. That's about right.
Okay,
So 200,000?
so it's to 200,000, And are you feeling like there are prospects? I mean, this is like it seems like a specialized position in
It
many
is.
ways, right?
So as Todd was talking about earlier, the TOTS, those are all our maintenance workers now, but a TOT 3, the designation of a 3 is actually a specialized person. That's why we're looking for a technician. So we want that technician to run the overall computers and stuff, but this TOT 3 would be specialized in this particular bridge and its operations also. So that's why we're looking at those levels, because it is so specialized.
Great, and I'm like, unrolling the big, I'm just so grinding me into I'm just looking on my big long sheet where this number, the 200,000 would show up. It would be, Bradley, maybe you can help me out. Is it just, because the maintenance budget the total is 100, is it 108?
Yeah.
108,
Yeah, it's usually
Million.
operations.
yeah, so I'm just, so it'll be under operations, right?
Yeah.
Oh, here it is, operating drawbridges, there's this line, I found it was at the crease of the page, so I
Yeah.
couldn't see it, okay, great. And I think it's here, as 250,000,
Yeah, I think there was some additional ads, if they needed any, setup or equipment, or if the people that were actually hired were, costing more than the average state employee.
So,
Okay.
yeah, those actually would be a little higher in pay. The other thing that Todd had mentioned a moment ago is a temporary. So currently, and I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, Chembro is the
Kimbrough?
Chimbro, sorry. Chimbro is the person, the company that's building it. They actually have one of our ex-employees, a retired employee, as their temporary that used to run the old drawbridge, so they're fully educated on this drawbridge, and they want to come work for us as a temp. Because they're retired, they don't want to work full-time. So that other 50 could be part of that too.
Okay.
This is new for us also, so we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah. absolutely, Representative
So
Cole.
that was my question. The old bridge must have had to have operators.
Yes.
So did the old bridge, what's the difference between,
So the old bridge was
payroll or the old versus the new? I don't know.
used temporaries before because
Okay.
things weren't as much. And then also being that we are asking for technicians do come in higher than our
Okay.
our maintenance workers.
Right.
Um,
Well, it's a much more sophisticated bridge though.
Yeah, I was actually gonna joke earlier when they were talking about it. The days of MacGyver with the gum, the bubble gum and the tinfoil wrapper to fix things are gone. This is literally before you grease something and, it wasn't a big deal.
Oh, my daughter lives in Charleston. I love seeing these bridges. I know it takes time. I'll sit there for 10 minutes, but it's great seeing the boats go.
The ships come by.
So our old expenditure was about $50,000 for the temporaries to run the old bridge.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
But again, as Wayne said, there wasn't the maintenance that we're anticipating for this, or the technology.
Right.
So.
Good questions? Looks like, go ahead.
Why didn't we build a tall bridge?
Thank you for asking.
So, yeah, that's a question for project delivery. I know they didn't look at that, because there is one that's just up the road there, on Route 78 in Swanton to Alberg, but they talked about the elevation there, the elevation on each side. To get that, they feasibly couldn't get it to go up high enough
Wow.
because of how much property they'd have to take.
Yeah.
And the curve just before you get there on Route 2
The
coming
maintenance
northbound.
year in and year out. Wow.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
and I know they did look at that, so, because that was another question was, can it be built like the 78 Swanton to Alberg Bridge?
Thank you.
The answer was no.
Representative Pouch?
So because it has federal requirements that we have this drawbridge, are there federal funds that come with maintenance?
No, they allow us to put the bridge in, they allow us to put our road over that. With that, the Code of Federal Regulations requires us, those unfunded mandates, requires us to operate it on their schedule, so no, it doesn't come with any federal funds on that, but.
All right, so just for the committee to ground us in the language, that's what we've been talking about is in section 5 of the bill, and it's section B there, so But now we're gonna move into the next section. If we're, it seems like we're done with questions. And who is, and I think Bradley,
I'll just,
and I see we're shifting seats, so just for the committee, this is section 6, the Central Garage Fund. Welcome back, Bradley.
There. Traveling, yep. Good.
Okay,
Um,
but to set up, or get your,
just gonna get my right PDF up here. There it is. Okay. So good morning. Thanks for having me. My name is Bradley Kuchenberger. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Agency of Transportation. Here to talk about Section 6 of the proposed T-bill, which has some requested language changes from the agency regarding the Central Garage Fund. And Dave Thurber is here as well, who's the superintendent of the Central Garage. So I'm happy to run through the language changes. I sent a document that's on the committee website that is a PDF that has some comments on it. So it kind of, each change to the language has a little, on the digital one, has a little yellow icon that will show you the comment of what the intended language change is for. And then the paper copies that were handed out have the comments right off to the side. So about the beginning of the summer, we decided it was time to review the Central Garage Fund statute to make sure that it was in line and request any revisions to continue having it be relevant for the way we operate the Central Garage. I believe this language was updated some years ago, but the fleet management and the way the program operates was a little bit out of line into how the actual Central Garage Fund was written into statute. So we've requested a few changes as a result. So if we look at it's 19 VSA section 13, which highlights the Central Garage Fund, basically all of its uses and how to calculate various things within the Central Garage Fund. But the first change we requested is in subsection A, subsection 2, which describes what the Central Garage Fund should be used for. And we wanted to broaden the scope of the items that the Central Garage Fund can be used to purchase. And this is the language that was there seemed limiting to the fact of only the supplies and operation of the equipment themselves, not necessarily any of the facility needs or the larger tools or assets that we need to purchase in order to fix that equipment. We also added in a section that says, so it's inclusive of any assets, supplies, which was kind of about getting the facilities and having the Central Garage mechanics have all the tools they need in order to operate on this equipment. And then also to the use of contractors necessary to provide that service. Now, this is something that for some specialized equipment has been occurring for quite some time. We might send a larger piece of equipment to a dealer or some other mechanical contractor who will do the service for us. So this is something we've been doing in operation, but when we looked at the language this summer, we thought maybe it was too narrowly described and wanted to make sure that the way we were operating was in line with what the law said. So we requested that change in subsection A, subsection 2. The next change is in subsection B. And subsection B was also a broadening of the scope of how we use the Central Garage monies, because the way the language was written made it appear as if those monies could only be used for highway maintenance equipment. And really, the central garage outfits various operations throughout the agency, not just in highway maintenance. They supply items to the airports and the other kind of modal units of our agency. So we wanted to expand the language to say that it's really to maintain safe and reliable equipment. And then later on, we'll get to, we redefined equipment to mean heavy equipment and vehicles that the agency uses, not just district maintenance. Just below, there's another section, the last bit of subsection B, which I'll put on the top of the screen here. There was a provision that said, however, the agency, even though we were talking about the central garage fund, the section said, however, the agency shall not increase the total number of permanently assigned or authorized motor vehicles without the approval of the General Assembly. And this, we had trouble with that definition of the word agency because we could potentially be running afoul of this language if we were buying what is described here as even smaller motorized equipment with transportation funds that's used outside of, in other maintenance capacities. And so we proposed to strike this language saying that we didn't need to kind of run to you to get approval to buy, like, I'm struggling to find an example, but some small piece of equipment that we would otherwise just be able to buy with our transportation funds. Looking for so that the next section we asked to change is in subsection C. And subsection C is about essentially how we fund what's called the equipment fund. It's a kind of subsection of the central garage fund, but it's only used to purchase new equipment to make sure that our fleets are continuously being renewed and up to proper standards. And in doing so, subsection C highlights a way in which we invest transportation fund dollars and also calculate the amount we reserve for the purchase of new equipment. And we've realized as you get down to subsection 2, subsection B, which is on line 20 up here and 21 or line 1 on the next page, is that we're in a strange scenario in that the pandemic caused such significant supply chain delays that we're having to use equipment and vehicles longer than their depreciable life. So under pre-pandemic strategy, we would always be replacing any assets that were fully depreciated. We would sell them at auction or use them in some other capacity. But this calculation says that we use the value of the depreciation to kind of reinvest the next year into the purchase of new equipment. In the pandemic scenario, we have such delays in being able to receive new equipment, sometimes 2 years, it's continued even into this year. Things are on back order. What it would do is it would really skew this calculation to underfund the amount that we need to reserve aside for spending on equipment. So we thought of a way to address that in this subsection B is that for equipment that is fully depreciated and still actively in service, for the purposes of this kind of budgetary calculation, we can use the amount equal to the depreciation on that piece of equipment from the prior year. So it's basically saying a truck was fully depreciated in year 5 of its useful life. We're still using it in maybe year 6 and year 7, but the way this language is written says that for the purposes of this calculation, we could still use the year 5 depreciated amount of those vehicles to kind of keep that equipment fund stable moving forward.
The committee members have any questions about that?
That's kind of technical accounting stuff.
Well, we
Yeah.
talked about it a little bit before today,
Yeah.
but, you know, I just want to give some, yeah.
So I guess, so if you normally depreciate it all after 4 years or 5 years?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so it's 5
They're on
years. So
different schedules.
on the 6th year, we still have this, so we're gonna keep the depreciation from the 5th year.
Yeah,
But when we go to the 7th year, are we still going back to the 5th year because it's fully depreciated in the 6th year?
yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the way it's written logically would be, so year 5, there's a depreciated amount that gets it to full depreciation.
Right,
Year 6, they would have 0 depreciation on our accounting books.
right.
But in this calculation, we would use year 5's.
So then year 6
And-
becomes year 5. So
Ye-
then when you get to year 7 and you still have this vehicle, you're gonna be using year 6, which is actually year 5's.
You got it.
Okay. That was my question.
That's a good clarification.
Yeah, it's
And it's a non-cash transaction.
a non-cash transaction. This is totally budgetary. It's just for the purposes of maintaining stability in the equipment fund.
Great.
Hopefully there'll be a time soon when this is a moot point, but that might be a few years. I don't know about the people who are on the ground actually trying to purchase these vehicles, so. So the last section of this statute is subsection F, which defines what equipment means in terms of the central garage. And so we wanted to adjust that to align with all of the other adjustments we made or have been requesting in the previous subsections. So it is the change from just defining it as highway maintenance equipment so that it can cover all of the equipment that Central Garage funds and maintains throughout the agency. And also the necessary assets required by the Central Garage in order to procure and maintain a safe and reliable fleet for our staff. And that is all of our requested changes for Central Garage fund language.
Any additional questions from the committee? Representative Walker?
Yes, I think what I'm going to try to tread very lightly and make sure, because I may not understand this in the best way possible, but as a legislator in a body that's providing oversight to the law that is to an agency, the law that was passed at some point had probably, hopefully, some significant reasons behind it. If I understand the chronology, though, the procedures and the decisions by the agency to change methods have happened, and now, and I try to write your quote, now the effort to make sure the law is now in line with what the practices are today. Something about the chronology of a law being passed and policies and procedures being developed, policies and procedures being changed or developed over time or adjusted as needed. The law is now out of date. Somewhere there's a breakdown in potentially chronology and activity where the agency feels, or perhaps feels not the right word, there are changes and things made, and we witnessed some things in the committee recently as yesterday where the chronology of how things change come back, and now we want to make sure the law is in accordance with our practice of today. And something about oversight and law versus agency and administration something seems broken in that, that piece. And I'm just perhaps, again, as I said, I want to tread somewhat lightly, but something is broken in readdressing a law to come into line with practice as opposed to practice coming in line with law. I think that Representative Corcoran hits to this on a regular basis, and that's perhaps an incorrect interpretation, but I'd like the agency to, I guess, perhaps respond if I'm misunderstanding something in oversight of legislation versus administrative or decisions, I guess.
Yeah, I think,
Please answer, I just want to make sure that, is there a specific section of the language that?
Well, the opening comments were that we need to make sure that the law has come in with the practice of today, and that just didn't sit well. And then, so then we're changing the definition of assets. We're also, somebody went to great lengths, maybe more specifically, Madam Chair, somebody went to great lengths to define the number of vehicles for some particular reason. I don't know why, but I would have thought somewhere in this chain of time over time that would have been somehow discussed or arranged, that why was it so important and now it's not. Somebody had the legislature had a reason to put it in there. And I think that's, so those are more specifically perhaps that somewhere something in I'm leaning left with a perception that the agency can change procedures and policies that may not be in line with the law, and then we come back and update the law. That doesn't sound like the right direction of oversight versus implementation. Perhaps I'm confused.
It's a totally valid question, especially when we're making changes to codified law. And I was asking just if there was a specific section in the languages here, or if.
Well, to be specific, it would be around the definition of assets and the definition of specific number of vehicles, but also in an overall concept.
Great. Bradley, I want to give you the opportunity to respond.
Representative Corcoran.
certainly, and I appreciate your point and the way in which you expressed it. I thought it was completely fair, and I believe that we went to review this statute in response primarily to the accounting mechanisms that govern this fund. And while we were there reviewing it, we saw some areas that I think we could interpret or that were open to interpretation that perhaps we wanted to clarify and make more specific. So I don't think that in any of our operations, we were shirking the law and the oversight of the way in which we were using these funds. I believe that there's changes in our reality. In this case, it was the pandemic and the way in which some of our budgetary calculations were made. And then while we were there, we realized that we wanted to bring some other things up to the year 2023 as opposed to the previous times whenever this statute's been updated. I believe it began in the late 80s and has been modified occasionally since. So in no way were we trying to following the necessary oversight, but there are realities in the global economy and the way that's best to operate a fleet that we pursued, and I believe would be in line with an interpretation of the central garage fund the way it's written. However, we think it's best at this point in time to be very clear about all of the things in which we're doing with the central garage fund and have it be specified in the law, and that we're positively stating what it is we can do instead of interpreting what we can do through a more abstract legal method.
Sorry, can I
Sure, please,
jump in?
Wayne, yeah.
I'm sorry, never introduced myself. Wayne Gamble, Division Director for District Maintenance and Fleet. the other piece, like, some of these questions I actually brought up, Todd brought up as we were meeting with Bradley to go over our budgets and to develop our budgets. So, for example, the definition of highway equipment. So is it an airport equipment that Central Garage has always had and dealt with? Is that, I don't remember who brought this one up, but is it, but one of us went, is that considered highway? You know, as I look at the language, is that considered highway? We do right-of-way stuff. You just have rail trail. We're working on the rail trail all the time too. So is that highway equipment? Even though it's equipment that could be used on a highway, but so that's how some of this came about. It was just trying to clarify because we said, well, that's kind of a gray word. So are we doing something we shouldn't be, or is this in it? And it's equipment that we've always done and always used on these places. It's just trying to clarify.
And I am not trying to put a label on intent.
Yeah.
Because in my day-to-day life, I have to move forward and make things work, which is what you guys are charged with for every day to make our state run and work. But now I'm sitting in a different chair where I'm expected to have some level of oversight, and there is something in how updated or how hamstrung do we make in when we write the law, when we pass this bill, what is it that needs to be changed, et cetera. So I'm sitting in a different chair than I would normally be in a day-to-day of making things happen.
Sure. But for example, one of them talks about the funding was only for like the working on this highway equipment. But they're all having to get trained on fixing electric things now. They have to get trained and need the equipment for the electric stuff now. So that stuff wasn't in this 20 years ago, 30 years, 40 years ago when this was written. So equipment changes, needs change. So do we need to come in and talk? And maybe we do, I don't know.
Well, I don't know if a legislative council needs to do something in terms of review, and I'm not looking for extra work. I'm just
I'll
concerned about
just
that.
raise this just because just to say, I think when we did hear from our attorney, she did, because I wrote notes specifically to this, that it was just the garage serves more than our highway maintenance. And that we know that because we pass budgets and policies. So I just want to say, I think we're going to be having Anthea in this afternoon to go through some of this, and this would be a good time to ask her as well. But I think you're raising a really important point.
On that further of what Wayne had brought up, there may have been some intent upon why airport issues were supposed to be somehow separate. I have no idea, and who has the historical knowledge there to know? I don't know, but certainly somebody was going way out of their way about the number of vehicles. That was incredibly important to somebody at one point.
Yeah.
Right, and you're right, and I think it's great that you're going to bring your lawyer in to ask and talk about it. But I've been around for 41 years, and I can't tell you what that number is because it's changed over the years. And just remember, every time a town we build a new road, we build whatever, we got to have equipment. And so, but that's what hopefully the lawyer can figure out and how we do it.
Yeah, and to belabor just one last second, I am trying to just make a point of sometimes the role of a legislative spot that we're in and versus your spot in the executive side of the administrative side of the.
So just so you know, I came in front of this group, not particularly all of you, but I came in front of this group years ago when 279 was built, and I was able to get a couple more people, another truck, and we actually got a specialized truck. It was the first in the state. Now we have others, but it was a dual winged one, so I had wings on both sides. So we did come in front of the group to get those things. So we didn't change, maybe the language didn't change, but we were here getting permission to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we have done those sort of things in the past.
Yeah, in terms of oversight, I think I'd just make the point of when it comes to the Central Garage Fund, your real strength in oversight is in the budget and the funding in which that you provide through your approval of the capital program and your suggestions to the appropriations committee. Beyond that, I think it then might shift to the agency's discretion in terms of the number of vehicles or what we need to accomplish a given task. If we stay within that budget, I believe is a significant level of oversight in and of itself.
Thank you very much.
Time for a couple more questions, Representative Bartholomew.
I just want to reinforce what you're saying. Most committees when, at most agencies, when there's something that needs to be changed, there's a housekeeping bill, which this is basically a housekeeping bill. And these agencies have to come to the committee of jurisdiction and make their case for why the current statutes don't match what's being done. It's totally inappropriate for an agency to come and say, well, we're not following the law because it doesn't meet our needs, so you need to change the law. The Constitution clearly says that supreme legislative authority comes from the legislature. So I think the agency just needs to reconsider how this is presented and be more careful. If things need to be changed, get them changed before you stop following the law.
So I don't feel that we have stopped following the law.
No. This is to clarify the law, to make sure that we know that we're following the
And we
law.
are here to do just that.
Right.
When we sat down to look at this, we said, we think some of these words are gray, and we just want to clarify because times have changed, and that's why we're here. And like I said, on the equipment, things like that, if we're hamstrung, as other states do, one of our neighbor states, New Hampshire, they hate it because they literally have to, if they run out of funds in one group to do something else, we can't buy any more salt until we can get in front of the committee and get permission to do it. And if we have to do that for chainsaws and other things because of the language, I guess, that's why we're here. Some of us thought these are great. In my mind, we think we should talk to them about getting things updated. But as I said, if we were ever going to break the law beforehand, we would come in front of the group as we have in the past. I have done it myself a few times, and we ask, this is what we need. Are you willing to do it? So
I do not assume any ill intent whatsoever.
Okay. Appreciate that, Wayne, and I know Representative McCoy had a question.
Well, I was just wondering, you talking about, am I missing number of vehicles in there with that?
We scratched over that. It
Oh,
got,
scratched over.
well, it got, I mean, it got lined
do
out.
recall, I mean, I've been on, I know it comes from here and Molly's been here more than I have been, but we used to get like a schedule of, okay, these ones are retiring and these are coming in, you know, the schedule of, like,
And that's actually in the budget
yeah, we
presentation.
get,
okay,
So our equipment plan is in the budget
Yes.
presentation, so yes, that's, you get the oversight of that during
Okay.
that.
Okay.
budget presentation.
great, thank you, thank you.
and honestly, I wish, if you all have historians that you can tell us what that number was, none of us can find it, to tell you the truth.
If I may,
Molly?
Please recognize, identify yourself for the record.
I'm Dave Thurber from Superintendent and Fleet Manager of Central Garage. And this is, I guess you could say anecdotal for the most part. In the 24 years I've been there, the fleet has been 650, and that has been a number that I've heard from my previous superintendents. Unfortunately, I have not seen an actual number somewhere.
Okay.
There is a study that looked at the number of vehicles that each district should have in each garage. And, our for the most part, we haven't added hundreds of miles of new road speed equipment. So our dump truck fleet has been about 250. And barring any major changes, I can't see a lot of equipment to what we have. So we try to replace in kind, one for one, without trying to increase the fleet.
Yep.
We try to get creative. So for example, remember when we came in and we showed you some of the innovative uses for our vehicles, our equipment? So we're putting over-the-rail mowers on loaders. Instead of buying a special mower and buying something new, we're trying to attach things to things. We have other equipment that we can do that sort of. Our skid steers, we buy skid steers not from Central Garage. The district has small equipment. It has to be, we've always kept it under 50 horse, 40 horse.
Tractors are under 85.
Okay, but anyways, we bought some snow blower attachments for some of them to help clean our bridges off. So we try not to, just because our funds don't allow us to either, but we try to get creative on what we already have to do more jobs.
Are there any other questions on this? We're gonna be, just for the committee, we're gonna be reviewing this language this afternoon with Anthea. We're gonna start to go from the top of the draft on this bill. So this is the time to ask questions. We've had some good discussion, but this is the time. Go ahead, Representative
I
Dodd.
just have a question because I remember this wording and I remember this issue from last time and I'm just trying to figure out like if you have any memory of, you know, a legislation coming to you and saying, you know, you've been adding a lot of vehicles or you haven't added enough vehicles and we need to make sure that, you know, that your decision-making process is tied to vehicles and not to personnel, this, you know, or salt versus, you know, so I'm trying to.
So I cannot remember any of that, doesn't mean it didn't happen, but our vehicles are actually tied mostly to our routes and our route lengths. So winter maintenance, for example, we worked with the legislature to come up with our SIC plan, snow and ice control plan. And that plan was decided on being that our routes would be, try to keep it no more than 2 to 2.5 hours in length. Well, those things decide what type of and how much equipment we need in order to do those sort of things. That's why we've gone to tandems over the years. We haven't gone to added equipment, but we've gone to bigger equipment because trying to keep those turnaround times. Not only that, some of our routes are 10 plus miles away from the garage. Is where they start. So we went to tandems and those, so they wouldn't have to make as many trips back to the garage because they'd lose an hour, hour and a half, trying to make that 10-mile trip back, getting loaded, filling up, getting back on the road. So we changed some of our single axles to double axles to do that sort of thing. So that's where our equipment, why our equipment's designed for the numbers.
Great. And I still think it would be helpful if we can get the breakdown of 650, because we used to know how many huge dump trucks or snow plows and how many other vehicles we had. I just remember getting that.
Is it not in the presentation that we got?
It was a little bit different.
Was it different layout?
Yeah.
So
We get a, like a,
Classes of them, and, you know, the lifespan.
and that's, yeah, right.
You did a similar, but we had that was more in depth.
I think currently,
It's-
the presentation had a plan that I called global one again,
Yeah.
which could interpret into work getting rid of, but if you'd like to set something.
And I know it's been difficult because of the COVID, because the supply chain, as Bradley said, is not there, really.
Okay. Yeah, so this is great. We're, this is great. We do have one more presentation before lunch. So this is, thank you so much. I
Thank
think
you.
it's some good discussion, clarification, and thanks for coming in. And thanks for the,
Thanks for having us.
yeah.
All that I
So,
said.
Before lunch, we're gonna be, coming back at 1:15 after lunch, but we're gonna squeeze in one more thing if we can. Joel,
I can try to catch you up.
jump on in. We had a few things left, to cover with Joel, and he thought that was pretty quick, fairly quick, but you know what, if it doesn't, I think we're gonna, you go to 12:15. And, some people might have to leave because there are caucuses and things, but let's see what we can do.
Sounds good.
All right. Yeah. Coming back, Joel.
Yes,
Snowy day.
snowy day.
Yeah. So while you're getting set up, if you can talk and set up, how much time do you think we will need?
I think we can get it done in a half hour.
You think so? Okay.
So,
All right.
I'm gonna have to leave.
Yep, okay. You know what, let me just. I'm pausing because I know some people had some caucuses to go to, but, you know, I think we're gonna go for 20 minutes and
Sure.
see where we get and.
Excellent. I'll go as quickly as I can.
Yeah,
I think the best, maybe we'll start with the most hefty lift,
okay, that sounds great.
which is tab 22.
Tab 22.
I need to open up. So for the record, I am Joel Perigo, V-Trans Municipal Assistant Program Manager. So tab 22, you're gonna see that this is just a line item.
Okay.
There's not much information.
It's not a heavy lift.
It's not a heavy lift. There's sort of a lot baked into that particular number that I can sort of talk to a little bit. I just want to open up. And it has changed, correct, since the book was originally published. Okay. So the Municipal Mitigation Assistance Program actually houses
Are you gonna show that on the screen?
I actually showed this already. I'm just using it as my sort of notes. I showed this in my budget testimony at the beginning. It actually houses 1, 2, 3 grant programs currently with a sort of 4th in the works. The first 2 are state funded only, Better Roads and Grants and Aid program. The Better Roads program is funded with a combination of transportation funds and clean water funds. This year in the clean water budget, for Better Roads, there's $1 million proposed, and then out of the T-bill, another additional $440,000. So that's baked into the 2 lines that say transportation fund and then the clean water fund. And then the grants and aid program is an additional $3 million that comes out of the clean water budget. And that program is strictly clean water dollars. And so these 2 programs, largely in part, are helping municipalities comply with their requirements under the municipal roads general permit. So back roads type best management practices, bringing gravel roads up to proper standards, putting the right amount of gravel on the road, proper crown, removal of roadside berms, installation of drainage culverts, stone line ditches, and that sort of thing. The Better Roads program is a competitive grant program that goes out each year. And the Grants and Aid program is a program that municipalities choose to participate in each year if they're willing. It's done by formula. So with $3 million, we basically do a breakdown of if 200 municipalities want to participate based on their mileage of hydrologically connected segments within their towns. They get a portion of the funding. And so the municipal roads general permit speaks to all these little nuances of hydrologically connected road segments.
So can I just, for my clarification, I'm just cross-referencing, Better Roads this year, is it 1.44?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And grants and aid would be 3.
Great.
I think, I wanted to highlight, and I did actually earlier in testimony, last year we actually had 236 of the 260 municipalities covered by the MRGP that received funding through the grants and aid program. And that number has steadily increased over the course of this program. I think last year was a record. So, and that solicitation will be going out soon for next year.
So for the committee who might be trying to follow along, remember that there was a technical correction that we need to make in this section of the budget. There was a typo. So I just want to, if people are following along in their white book, so.
Yeah, I've lost.
Yeah, so I can see some members. So we're going to change that in our Ledge Council is tracking this too. So I'll make sure.
Yeah. If it's helpful, I could sort of do a breakdown of that number to speak to how I'm proposing it, or I'm presenting it, to show the $5 million that's coming out of the Clean Water Fund, where is that $5 million going to? It's actually going to 3 separate programs. The federal funds are going to, I believe, 2 separate programs, and the transportation fund is going to a program plus our stormwater utility fees. That might be helpful.
Sure, I think you gave us some of the breakdown before.
Okay.
I have the 5 million going to the 3 million to grants and aid, 1 million Better Roads, and 1 million match for the Mrs. Boyd basin. Is
Correct.
that
That's
right?
That's right.
Okay,
Okay.
that feels good.
Well, I
We're getting somewhere.
Yeah, I think I just wasn't writing everything down, assuming that it was about to be presented or distributed to
Yeah,
us,
so
so.
totally, yeah,
Okay.
that's okay. It's okay, and then, but you said with the 705,000, that's going where?
Part of that is the 440
Okay.
from the Transportation Fund for Better Roads, and the other is the remaining,
Gotcha. That's for the-
whatever it is our stormwater utility fees that V-Trans pays to the municipalities within Chittenden County.
Okay. Representative Pouch.
Thank you. Just a question on the Better Roads, those are grants that the towns apply for to do, I'll call it little capital improvements to roads. But the grants and aids are based on whoever applies, you dole it out, and it's more like for maintenance of.
It's very similar, almost the same exact thing. It's the same, like, same capital improvements.
Coming from two different buckets.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and the match on those both is 20%, so it's an 80-20 split on both of those programs. But they're generally one and the same, except that one is competitive versus the other it's just it's a formula. Everybody gets a piece of it.
And we have clean water funds going into that, so it does have to go through I'm assuming the Clean Water Board.
Right.
And so that those projects have to be part of addressing our clean water targets.
That's what my
Yeah.
question.
That's what okay.
Yeah, and so these all are for compliance with the municipal roads general permit. And so when we, the agency, we award these projects, and then we collect a bunch of data related to what it buys us. It basically brings these road segments up to full compliance with the permit. However many segments come up to full compliance, we report that back to ANR, and it all gets captured in the Clean Water Investment Report each year. So that's two of the programs within municipal mitigation. I'll say the third one is a proposal that's new, and it is the Missisquoi Basin Transportation Water Quality Improvement Projects. These there was remaining funds from an earmark related to the construction of the Missisquoi Bay Bridge. And I don't necessarily have the full history here. This would be something to be better pointed towards, like somebody like Michelle Boomhauer, but the federal funding that remained was basically promised to be used as water quality improvement projects in that area. And so we're just standing that program up this year, and it results in $3.3 million of federal highway funds, and then the match of 20% would come out of the clean water funds. You'll see that it proposes $1 million, which is a little bit more than what we actually need, but for the 20% match. At the time of estimating, we were using round numbers. So those projects have not been selected yet. They will be locally managed projects selected in conjunction with the Northwest Regional Planning Commission and DEC, Environmental Conservation, specifically their clean water investment area, their division.
I've seen any more questions.
Okay. The last program is a program that's existed since the Clean Water Bill passed. It's the Municipal Mitigation Assistance, it's the Municipal Highway and Stormwater Mitigation Program. Sounds all the same. These are federal funds that we award as grants. It is a competitive program, 80-20 split. The funds are intended to be used for larger projects in scale. Things like gravel wetlands, stormwater detention ponds, stormwater treatment facilities, that sort of thing. We've done some culvert replacements when there's significant erosion occurring, and what else have we done? Sand and salt sheds come out of this program.
Representative Pouch, sorry.
Could you say the name of it again, the program?
So Municipal Mitigation Assistance Program is the overarching. This one is Municipal Highway and Stormwater Mitigation Program.
So I'm just, because I see a couple of people trying to follow you, and for committee members, we have the white book, but we also, if you look on our committee page, under testimony under Joel's name, he did a budget presentation, he has many of the tabs, and this is on, this starts on page 11, I think, of that presentation. So just in case people are looking for the detail, that's where we're following along with you.
Exactly.
They're pretty pictures too.
So the last, oh no, I guess that was the last one, I'm sorry. And then the last piece of it, I suppose, is the V-Trans stormwater utility fees that is in the transportation fund number.
Are folks all good? Any additional questions? Not seeing any.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll check it.
Okay.
That is tab 22. So then, town highway structures is probably tab 15. Again, not much to look at in the book, is a line item. These are the projects, they're state transportation funds only. Eligible projects are bridges, culverts, and retaining walls on classes 1, 2, and 3 town highways. This year's proposal is for $7.2 million, which is a statutory requirement. The match on these is 20%. 20% if the town has not adopted local codes and standards, 10% if they have. And this program and the next program, so they don't show up in the book as individual projects. We have an internal sort of database that maintains, that we use to manage all these grants. I'm happy to provide a listing of the grants that sort of outstanding, if that helps.
That might be helpful. We could just, because I think you're speaking to in the lower portion of this slide, right, that you have.
Yes,
about
exactly.
Why, like.
Yep.
It might be helpful to know, like.
Yep.
I'm just gonna read this from your side. FY23, we funded 7.6 million, and the demand was 19.9. Thank you.
Yes.
And that's on, and the 38% funded. So that's where my question is right now, like, so, the meaning I answered my own question. Yeah, so we see the demand for that.
Yeah.
Program. It could be good to see what did and didn't get funded.
Yep.
So some of the questions we get sometimes, or I get anyway, is how come I'm not getting a grant? And then previously given us that breakdown of every town.
Yeah.
And you look down through it and say, well, you didn't apply.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah. There's a couple different reports I could provide. There's one that shows sort of that breakdown over time for each. It goes down to the town level. It shows what towns have received over. Right. I forgot how far back. I mean, we can go back.
We've seen that.
Yeah. And then there's another one that actually shows sort of a summary of the applications received over, I think that one's year by year. I can provide like the last couple of years or something. I'd have to go look, but it's definitely more detailed information what you're getting here. So
that is helpful for us with our colleagues a lot of the time too. So that'd be great.
So I'll provide what I think sort of makes sense, and if there's any additional questions after that, just feel free to reach out with.
Perfect.
Because we do have some canned reports built in that we can quickly put together. So okay, so the next one is tab 16, which is the sort of the sister to the structures, which is the town highway class 2 paving. Really, the only change here, besides the dollar amount, is that the match. 30% of the town has not adopted local codes and standards, and 20% if they have. Same thing. I can certainly provide more detail as to.
Same deal. It's a grant, but towns have to apply.
Yeah. And these projects, because there's there's only so much class two money, there's only so much class two mileage. It's basically done on a percentage basis. If you have 5% of the class two miles in your town and the total state, you should be getting about 5% of the dollars. And that report actually shows that very clearly. Okay.
Comments, questions from the committee?
Is this,
Go, Representative Barker.
you said something in the last one about statutorily required to spend X amount of money. Is this the same? Okay.
Yeah. Which I think Bradley was in here providing some information on previously, so.
Representative Papcha.
So on this one here, that's why we the town sends a report. Here's the total mileage of our roadways.
That is part of it.
And that's put to this. And so it seems like in our town, the amount we get seems to be the same, pretty much.
So yeah, I think you're referring to town highway aid.
Okay.
So with town highway aid, they certify mileage of classes 1, 2, and 3, and they get a certain amount based on that total percentages. So this is a separate, slightly different program than town
Based on
highway
the
aid.
number of miles.
But it's it's very similar. Yeah, when I provide that report, you'll see how it breaks out.
Great.
That's the Connie Quinby that.
The town highway, yeah, that's attached to the COLA now.
Okay, so there are the town highway aid program, but I don't really have anything more than what I provided during budget testimony to present unless there's questions.
Not seeing any.
Okay. And then there's we can go to tab 17 quickly, which is the town highway non-federal disasters. And so this is the program that covers towns in the event that there's sort of a localized storm and it doesn't rise to the level of either a FEMA declaration or a federal highway ER declaration. So if a town has a localized storm and blows out a class 3 road and they lose a bunch of culverts, they can come to this program and apply. Towns are eligible up to for the greater of either 90% of the replacement cost or that costs minus an amount equal to 10% of the overall total highway budget minus the town highway's winter maintenance budget. This is in statute. So you don't have to memorize it. It is in statute. It's also in my other presentation from earlier this year, so.
And it's you're requesting level funding.
Hey, and in this program, historically, there's sort of ebbs and flows and, some years it's not touched at all. In other years, we have to increase the amount, so it depends. I think that's everything.
I put your initials next to all the
Yes.
apps. They were several of them. Joel, this is great. Are there any final questions for the committee?
Thank you.
Thank you for coming back in and thanks for really, it's nice to have succinct testimony on this stuff. So with that, we will wrap up.